Time for the Unit 3, Lesson 8 homework with me, Miss Billman. Yeah, I'm back at it again on this cool iPad. I'm just kind of obsessed right now. I could zoom in, zoom out, but either way, I'm going to go through all the homework. We're going to complete each statement with a less than or greater than. So these are fractions that do not have a common denominator. When we don't have a common denominator, we need to find one. We find a common denominator by finding the least common multiple. So between 8 and 10, I can start listing 8, 16, 24, 32, 40. I already know, woohoo, it's going to be 40. Now, why do I know it's going to be 40? Because when I have a 10 as one of my numbers, it has to be a number that ends in 0. So like 10, 20, 30, 40. So I go through, circle my least common multiple, make that my new denominator. Now, what did I do to the 8 to get to 40? I multiply by 5. Whatever I do to the denominator, I need to do to the numerator. I do the same thing with the 7/10, but this time with 4. So which is greater, 25 40ths or 28 40ths? Well, it's the 28 40ths. Now for 1/4 and 3/10. Now for this one, I could list out, and I do know that 40 is a number that they have in common, but there's actually a lower one. And that's the 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Who would have thought, right? So when I get to the 20, I already have this in my mind. Yes, I know this will work. I'm going to do this with the 10. 10, 20, 30, 40. I do know 40 could work, but that's not the least common multiple, right? So because it's the least common multiple, I use that as my new denominator, and it's my common denominator. I multiply the 4 by 5 and get 20. And I multiply the 1 by 5 and get 5 over 20. Now the 10 I multiplied by 2, I multiplied by 3 by 2 and get 6. So which is bigger? 6/10. It's greater. I'm just trying to figure out how to move this, but it's okay. So 2/3 and 5/7. Now I rewrite mine. 2/3 is equal to something, and 5/7 is equal to something, and we need to find the common denominator. So I can start listing my multiples. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. I do know 21 is probably going to be my least common multiple because I know for 7, it's 7, 14, 21. I go through, circle my least common multiple. It becomes my new denominator. I multiply the 3 by 7, so I do that to the 2, I get 14. I multiply the 7 by 3, I multiply the 5, I get 15. So 5/7 is greater than 2/3. Now 5/6 or 7/10. 5/6 is equal to something, and 7/10 is equal to something as well. I do know 60 would work. Absolutely it would, but it's not the least common multiple. That's just a multiple they have in common. So I start doing the 6. The 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. I know once I've stumbled upon a number with a 0, the 10 is going to work. So the 10, 20, 30, 40, the 30 is going to be my friend on this one. That is my least common multiple, and it is my new denominator. I multiply the 6 by 5 because that's the number I need to multiply by to go to 30. And I do that to the numerator and get 25 30ths. I multiply the 10 by 3, so I do that to 7, and I get 21. So 25 30ths is greater than 7/10. So now we're looking at adding and subtracting. I'm going to do this 2 different ways. I will show you both. So it could be that I'm going to do some regrouping. It could be that I'm just focusing on the fraction. It could be that I do an improper fraction. Either way, let's get this party started. So 3/8 and 5/12. I need to find a common denominator. Anytime I find a common denominator and I follow through with these steps, I'm finding an equivalent fraction, and that makes it so I'm able to truly compare. So 8, 16, 24, 36. I could go to 48, but I could go to 40, but I could just stop at the 24. The 24 is the common denominator. So 3/8 is equal to how many 24ths? I multiply the 8 by 3, so I do that to the numerator, and for the bottom, I multiply it by 2, and I get 10 24ths, and for the top, I get 9 24ths. So I rewrite my equation. 9 24ths plus 10 24ths is equal to 19/24. That's my final answer. This is really highlighting that my handwriting is way better in person than on this, but I'm going to work on it. That is my pledge to you. 1/3 and 5/8. So I need to find a common denominator between 3 and 8. So I can start listing it out. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. I do have a feeling it's going to be 24 because I know 8 is an 8, 16, 24 situation. So I circle my least common multiple, and that is my new denominator. These numbers are actually kind of far apart. So 1/3 is equal to how many 24ths, and 5/8 is equal to how many 24ths. I multiply the 3 by 8, so I do that to the 1, and it's 8 24ths. I multiply the 8 by 3 and the 5 by 3, and I get 15. So 8 24ths plus 15 24ths is equal to how many 24ths? It's going to be equal to 23 24ths. And that's my final answer. I can't do anything to make it any lower or any more simplified. Now we have some mixed numbers. Again, I'm going to show you different ways to do this. I'm still trying to figure out the screen, but that's okay. So I have 2 and 6/7 and 4 and 4/5. So I'm going to focus on the fraction. That's going to be what I'm really looking at. 6/7 and 4/5. So I'm going to list out my common denominator, but I need to find some multiples. So 7, 14, 21, 28. I do know that anytime I get to a number with a 5 or a 0, the 5 would work. If you notice, there's a pattern: 5, 10, that's 0, 15, 20, 25. So 35 is the least common multiple that we have, and I'm going to circle it, and I'm going to find the equivalent fractions. So 6/7 is equal to how many 35ths? 7 multiplied by 5 would give me 35, so it's 30 35ths, and 5 multiplied by 7 gives, and I do that to the top for the numerator, and I get 28 35ths. So I rewrite it: 2 and 30 35ths plus 4 and 28 35ths. Now I'm going to add those together. My 2 and my 4 are 6, and the 30 and the 28, that's going to be 58 35ths. I could say that. Maybe I'm not comfortable with simplifying. I could say that. Unless it says, put this in the most simplified. If you're feeling comfortable with this, do it, but let's try to simplify. So if I simplify it, there is 7 and how many 35ths? It's 23 35ths, because that's how much is left over when I make one whole. Now I'm going to show you a way to do this with combining to make an improper fraction. So I multiply my whole number in my denominator, and then I add my numerator. So 6 multiplied by 3 is 18, and I add 5, and I get 23. So 23 6ths plus 5 multiplied by 2 is 10, plus 3 is 13, 13/5. Now I know my common denominator between these is going to be 30. I just happen to know because it's a 0, and it has to be 0 or 5, and with 6, that's the number that's going to give me that. I multiply my numerator and my denominator by the numbers that get me to my new denominator, my common denominator. So I multiply the 6 by 5. Now I need to do the 23 by 5, which is 115. And then I multiply the 5 by 6. Now I need to do 13 by 6, which is 78. I rewrite it. 115 over 30 is equal to 78 over 30. Or I'm going to add that, not equal to. So now I'm going to find the equal to. Now I'm going to add 115 plus 78. 8 plus 5 is 13. Carry the 1. 7 plus 1 is 8 plus 1 is 9. Bring down the 1. 193 over 30. Again, I could keep it there if I wanted to. And if I know, hey, guess what? This is where I'm confident. But we could try to simplify it. So 30 goes into 193 6 times, and I get 13 left over, and my denominator is 30. Number 9. 5 3/4 minus 3 5/6. I'm going to be completely focusing on the fraction. 3/4 and 5/6. The common denominator between 4 and 6 is going to be 12. I multiply my 4 by 3 to get 12, so I do that to the numerator, and it's 9/12. And I multiply the 6 by 2, and I do that to the 5 and get 10/12. So 5 and 9/12 minus 3 and 10/12. Now I can't subtract a 9, like the 10 from the 9, right? I can't have a negative number. But I do know that when I have a whole number, that's like saying, 5 complete 12 sliced pizzas that I have. So I borrow from there. I take that, and it becomes a 4, and I add the 12 to the numerator. 4 and 21/12 minus 3 and 10/12. It becomes 1 and 11/12, which is my final answer. Number 10. 4 1/2 minus 2 8/9. So I'm going to make a improper fraction. 4 multiplied by 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. 9 multiplied by 2 is 18, plus 8 is 26 over 9. My common denominator will be 18. It has to be an even number because I have a 2. And I know that with 9, it's 9, 18, 27, 36. Kind of goes back and forth with odd, even, odd, even. And because it has a 2 again, it has to have an even number, which is 18. So my new denominator is 18. I star that. Now, what did I do to the 2 to get to 18? I multiplied by 9. What did I do to the 9 to get to 18? I multiplied by 2. So I have 52 over 18, and then I have 81 over 18. I rewrite it. 81 over 18 minus 52 over 18. And I'm going to do some subtraction.
Good morning, staff.
Now I'm going to put mine vertically. That's just how I feel really confident with my subtraction. And I get an answer of 29. So I could write 29/18, but I could also write this as a mixed number with 1 and 11/18. Off to number 11. 3 5/8 minus 1 5/6. I'm going to focus on the fraction. 5/8 and 5/6. So my common denominator, now I need to start thinking, like if I have 6, 12, 18, 24, it's going to be 24 because I do the same with the 8. And I have 8, 16, 24. I multiply by 3, get 15. Multiply the 6 by 4, do the 5 by 4, get 20. So 3 and 15 24ths minus 1 and 20 24ths. I'm in the same situation where my equivalent fraction is actually larger on my second. So that 3 becomes a 2, and I add the 24 to the 15. So I rewrite it. 2 and 39 24ths, and I subtract 1 and 20 24ths. I get a final answer of 1 and 19 24ths. I can't take it any lower, so I just leave it at that. 1 and 19 24ths. Number 12. 5 and 1/3 minus 2 and 4/5. I'm going to make this into an improper fraction. So 15 plus 1 is 16 over 3. 5 multiplied by 2 is 10. Plus 4 is 14 over 5. My common denominator is 15. I multiplied the 3 by 5, so I need to do that to the 16. So 16 multiplied by 5, there's 30, put down a 0, carry the 3, and then 8, so 80/15. I multiply the 5 by 3, and now I do the same to the 14. There's 12, 42. 42/15. So now I rewrite it. 80 over 15 minus 42 over 15. I have a common denominator, so I know my denominator will be 15, but now I can subtract the 42 from 80 and get 38, so my final answer could be 38 over 15. Or I know that 15 goes into 38 twice, and I have 8 left over, so it's 2 and 8/15. Linda bought 2 2/3 yards of fabric for a project. She used 1 1/4 yards. How much fabric does she have left? So I'm going to write the equation, 2 2/3 minus 1 1/4. Now I need to decide, how do I want to solve this? I could solve this with a improper fraction, turning them into that, or I could just focus on the fraction. So I'm going to do it into an improper fraction. 2 multiplied by 3 is 6, plus 2 is 8, so 8/3, minus 4 multiplied by 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5, so I would subtract 5/4. My common denominator with my least common multiple is going to be 12. So 8/3 is equal to how many 12ths? And then 5/4 is equal to how many 12ths? I multiply the 3 by 4 to get 12, so I do the same to the top. 8 multiplied by 4 is 32. I multiply the 4 by 3, I do the same thing to the 5, and I get 15. So 32/12 minus 15/12 is equal to 17/12. And I could leave it as 17/12 yards, or I can go in and say 1 5/12 yard. Either way, there's a big difference, and we talked about it in class. If I get the right answer and it's just not simplified, but then I try to simplify it and I don't share what I started with, then I'm not going to be able to say, like, oh, were they unable to find the answer, or was it simplifying? That was the tricky part. Jerry rides his bike 1 3/10 miles one day. He bikes 1 5/8 miles the next day. How far does he ride in the 2 days altogether? So I'm adding. So it's 1 3/10 plus 1 5/8. I will be focusing on the fraction. 3/10 and 5/8, the common denominator is the least common multiple, and that is 40. I multiply the 10 by 4 to get 40, so I'm going to do the same to the 3, and I get 12/40 for 3/10 as the equivalent fraction. And for 8, I multiply by 5, and I do the same to the top, and I get 25. So I rewrite it. 1 12/40 plus 1 25/40. It makes it super straightforward when I have a common denominator, and it's like, ooh, yes, we got this. So I add this all together. My whole numbers are equal to 2. My fractions are equal to 37 over 40. So final answer is 2 37/40 miles ridden. Wow, that's a long time. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'm glad you joined me today.